34. I'm Steve Williams on AM 560. The Answer.
Get the latest weather, traffic, and news updates online at 560theanswer.com. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios. This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan, and in for Amy J this morning, Charles Thomas, former ABC7 political reporter.
That's me.
And Charles, our very own Senator Dick Durbin had a little press avail yesterday to express his deep concerns and general opposition to Kash Patel. He was supposed to get voted up yesterday, and that's got pushed off a week. But, you know, I don't think that there's much give from Republican senators on Kash Patel. I haven't heard a single one even express reservations. So this is just performative, I guess, in service of the base, because you were supposed to fight in the streets and in the courts and in the Senate as well. Here's Dick Durbin.
We decided 50 years ago to depoliticize the FBI by giving 10-year tenures to those who headed up the FBI to transcend any single administration or any single president. So that's one of the most important things that distinguishes this nomination from others. Secondly, we have an individual in Kash Patel who has published a book which in detail describes his view of politics in America. It is a book that is filled with grievances, filled with conspiracy theories, and filled with information of how he sided with the January 6 rioters against the police in this very Capitol complex. And so when he came to testify before the committee, we had some questions that he was asked and he needed to answer about his conduct. And we went through them, particularly on the element of the J6 choir. I know this sounds like a curious thing to spend any time on, but it's a reflection on his priorities and the fact that he's asking to head up the most important single law enforcement agency in the United States at a time when he decided with the so-called political prisoners of January 6th instead of the brave men and women who risked their lives to protect us here in the Capitol complex. He created this musical undertaking and was proudly proclaiming it to Steve Bannon, how the hard work he went to master and digitize it and create a musical work that can be played at the Trump rallies.
I wonder if that J6 musical got any USAID funding.
Yeah, it's right in line there.
Exactly. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by Bret Baier, host of Fox News Special Report, of course, 5 p.m. weekdays, best-selling author of To Rescue the Constitution, George Washington and the Fragile American Experiment, as well as the History Club, Duel Across Time. Bret, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. Kash Patel, is any of the remaining cabinet officials, are they in? Do you see anybody in jeopardy in terms of confirmation?
I don't right now, unless there's some thing that we don't see as far as Republicans raising concerns. But of the people who are raising concerns, Bill Cassidy for RFK Jr., he's on board. Susan Collins for Tulsi Gabbard, she's on board. Todd Young for Tulsi Gabbard from Indiana, he's on board. So, you could have a McConnell, you could have a Murkowski, but right now we can't see four. And if you had three, you would have J.D. Vance break the tie.
Mm-hmm. Since I brought up USAID, I saw your interview with New York Congressman Tom Suozzi yesterday. And I thought it was very interesting, that all these he's very measured compared to many members of his caucus. That what's her name from New Jersey, LaMonica McIver or something, or shut down the Senate. This is war. They're very, very upset about, very protective of USAID funding. Why are they? I mean, I have my theory, but I want to get yours. Why are they deciding that this is a hill they must die on?
It's a little politically bizarre. Because, first of all, zero people understand fully what USAID even is, let alone if you start putting out these millions and millions of dollars for these projects one by one, people are like, why are we doing this?
Right.
The transgender opera in Colombia or something. And third, believe it or not, it was Warren Christopher, the Secretary of State under Bill Clinton, who first said USAID should be disbanded and all folded under the State Department. That was his idea, a Democratic Secretary of State. That's essentially what's happening. It's not like all aid is dying. It's that it goes under Rubio and they scrutinize it more, and that it's just not a freestanding agency is essentially thumbing its nose at any oversight.
And they drastically reduce the headcount within that agency or sub-agency.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, from 10,000 to hundreds. And so, listen, I think it's a tough political hill to die on, but there is a animosity towards Elon Musk doing this in the way that they're doing it, and I think that battle's going to continue.
Well, right. And so my sort of intuition on it was, look, we have to go right now because it's not so much about USAID, although that's a nice hobby horse for some of them, like Ilhan Omar. But it's about, if we give in here, if we don't make a fuss about this, I mean, he's going everywhere, including to areas where we do have institutional interests, or maybe I have personal interests. And, I've got, 2 idiot cousins working at this agency and so on and so forth. And I don't want Elon Musk to touch him.
See the wrecking ball that's coming. And listen, we talk about we're always one election away from solving big things like waste, fraud, and abuse. Here is someone going after waste, fraud, and abuse in big, big numbers in across the government. Now, how he does it and making sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed is really important. But if you listen to the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, he's convinced that the process is run by very technically savvy people, that is not just an 18-year-old without a clearance.
Right. And, well, then that was the other point that Suozzi made on your show that you pressed him on. He's trying to be reasonable. So it's like, just give us a list. We have the power of the purse. We're hearing a lot about that this week. Give us a list. If you were so interested in this, then why don't you come with your own list, Mr. Purse Strings, right? I mean, all these people in Congress complaining about we have oversight, we have the purse strings. Well, I mean, you act like you're an innocent bystander. You're talking about power you have that you don't use, and so somebody has been contracted out to do what you won't.
Exactly. I mean, where was your list of the millions and millions of dollars that's being spent for silly things? I mean, they never attacked it. They never went after it. That wasn't even a topic, USAID. It wasn't even in, like, a hearing. So I think that's a little disingenuous.
Really sort of stunning. I think people are still trying to wrap their minds around it. Announcement with Bibi in town this week that Trump is proposing to have the U.S. take over Gaza, and apparently will rebuild it and will resettle the former residents of Gaza. And it's really interesting. I mean, it's an interesting idea. I don't know if it's going to happen. Of course, it gets immediate opposition from all the usual suspects, including countries in the region. But I mean, as Elliot Kaufman wrote in the Wall Street Journal, to do anything other than that is just to keep the Gazans in this sort of permanent refugee status in advance of perpetual war in that region. Trump is trying to do something different, but you just get the knee-jerk reaction because it's Trump.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think that the way he phrased that brought up all kinds of questions about U.S. troop involvement overseas in a foreign war that he's often campaigned against.
Right.
I think you've seen an evolution of him talking about it over the days since then. I plan to ask him some of that in the Super Bowl interview. But what he has done is taken the focus off of a two-state solution and to say, okay, this is what I would like to do. What do you all have in the Middle East? What's your solution? And all these people are running around now trying to come up with an idea that publicly they are talking about to counter the U.S., owning Gaza. So I think it's negotiating 101 for Donald Trump. I think that it probably raised some eyebrows all over the place.
Do you think it was Bibi's idea? Because when Trump was talking about it with the two of them sitting there before the press, he was like he was smiling like a Cheshire cat. He clearly wasn't blindsided by it, and I just wonder,
I think it may have been because he couldn't have been more effusive about the meeting or what came out of it. And yeah, look, if Donald Trump starts saying this as president and throws this against the wall, suddenly the paradigm shifts. And it's no longer this struggle to get to a two-state solution. It is, we have to prevent U.S. troops from owning Gaza.
On one more front before we let you go, the ICE, the projection is the pace that ICE is on right now, be 1 million arrests in 4 years. And then there's some suggestion, that Trump wants to expand that because the numbers need to be bigger. But that's really happening. 1 million people. Well, that's the track right now. Obviously, the setting up Gitmo. The possibility of contracting out to El Salvador for domestic repeat violent offenders. A lot of stuff going on in the public safety front. A couple governors may end up in Gitmo too. Phil Murphy, J.B. Pritzker, who knows? Your view and how that is proceeding, the quote unquote mass deportations.
Yeah, listen, I think that they're going after criminals. I think they've had some success. They had a bust that fell apart in Colorado because allegedly the media tipped off these guys that they were coming. That set off Tom Holman. I think that a lot of these communities are applauding it because they're getting the bad elements out of them, and it's also sending a signal. The crossovers and the border encounters are at the lowest level they've been in decades. You've got a few hundred as opposed to more than 4,000 every day.
And has anybody checked in on those communities that were overwhelmed, the smaller communities like Springfield, Ohio, Charleroi, Pennsylvania? I just wonder how that is proceeding. Maybe they're still down the priority list a little bit, but with questions about abuses of the temporary protected status program and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's worth sending a reporter to. You're right. I think that some of those communities were really hurting before the election. Just the visual of Gitmo and thousands and thousands and thousands of migrants being flown to Gitmo, that in and of itself is a disincentive because it's set up and it's real.
And now you have, in addition to that, Pam Bondi is hitting the ground running by suing Illinois, Cook County, Chicago.
Yeah, suing and then signing a directive taking away federal funding for sanctuary cities and sanctuary states. So, that's going to start to hit. That's real money after a while. And, it'd be interesting to see if the stand-up to this is still as sanctuary as it once was.
Bret Baier is the host of Fox News' Special Report, weekdays 5 p.m. Best-selling author of To Rescue the Constitution, George Washington and the Fragile American Experiment, as well as the History Club, Duel Across Time. And he's got the Super Bowl interview with Trump on Super Bowl Sunday.
You bet.
Anything else you want to preview? Anything else about Trump?
Well, we've got that. It'll air on the pregame show in the 3 o'clock hour, probably around 3:30, and then the rest of that interview, which I expect will be about 30 more minutes, will air on Special Report on Monday.
Are you going to get Bradley Cooper, Taylor Swift as well, or?
I don't think so.
All right.
He's the first sitting president to go attend a Super Bowl, so it should be interesting.
Very good. Bret Baier, thanks as always. Appreciate it.
We'll see him.
And he joined us on the Turnkey.Pro answer line.
It's what Chicago is talking about. It's Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy on AM 560. The Answer.
With over 50 years of precision tooling, that's a lot of job shop work and custom parts. And it's why Bruscher Machining is the go-to CNC turning and machining company in Chicagoland. If you have a custom project, whether it's a single prototype or a short-run production of a few thousand pieces, give them a call today.